Ben.
Chezi, how is it going?
Good. I'm sorry for starting a little late.
Okay.
Coming back from different different errands. I'm sending you the transcript or the transcript review from last week. How have you been doing, sir?
I've been good. Good. Things have been good. Family is good, healthy. Um, no complaints. What about you?
Also, family, thank God, doing well. Um, no complaints. Some complaints, but
But
I
not
won't.
not not vocally, like not.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So thank God things are well. There was a very fun, enjoyable, sort of like a symposium of sorts. Well, not a symposium, but like a nice lecture with about Joseph and his brothers with Rabbi Shirky, and they had few different other individuals on the panel, and each spoke about like their understanding of reading the Bible and and reading the Bible and how we see Joseph and his brothers, and how do we see ourselves as Israel today, as Jewish people. So it was quite interesting. I'm very happy that there's a very good turnout as well. So I'm glad about that.
What was the occasion for talking for that and for specifically talking about Joseph and his brothers?
Well, Joseph and his brothers is part of a conversation, which is the fight, the tension that we have, obviously, um, in Israel today, and as we've had in the past as well. And the idea is Maaseh Avot Siman Lebanim, right? What can we learn from these archetypes as well, and how could we avoid these things? And then you had an ultra orthodox, a religious Zionist, Rabbi Shirky. You had a secular rabbi. That's what he's called. And there was another guy named Nathaniel Ellinson, who's a Tanakh teacher, very, very interesting person. You might also enjoy his channel as well, Tanakh Israeli, very, very popular. Anyways, each one of them spoke and gave like their different perspectives of how they see these things. And the occasion was Rabbi Shirky more and more has been, also with promoting on social media, more creating his channel, more of like a brand in a certain sense. Not that he's thinking about that, but the people around him very much want that for him. And that platform has been growing. And this was one of the occasions that they're doing as he discusses the Bible, and he wanted to bring these different voices out there for people to have this discussion.
Sorry, I was setting up StreamYards in the back. What about Rabbi Shirky?
It's too late.
Okay.
I was saying we were at I was at some event of his about Bible centered, Israel culture centered, and it was just very, very enjoyable.
That's wonderful, and I know Rabbi Shirky is big with the Noahide movement. Yeah, is he?
I posted on the group that there's going to be the Congress in November, and there's a whole. I mean, you can find the information over there. Which is it really is fantastic what's going on.
Out of curiosity, is he affiliated with the religious Zionist camp?
I know what affiliated means.
As in, like, does he consider himself like a religious Zionist?
Yeah, he for sure sees himself as a religious Zionist. I don't see if he would see himself in. I don't say he sees himself. Let's say again how politically that's seen as, let's say, Ben Gvir or Smotrich. I'm sure.
Well, of course not.
However, they would probably speak very highly of him.
No, I mean more like someone like. Do you know who Yoram Hazony is?
Yeah, Yoram Hazony, sure.
Yeah, so I would say there might be similarities there because I know Hazony is he's an Israeli, right?
He's an Israeli and American dual citizenship. But we digress. Let's
Okay,
jump.
yeah, let's get started. May I read?
I'm sorry?
May I read?
I'm sure you could read. Yeah, by the way, Dawn, while I am going on vacation in a few weeks, this is regular attire, right? Why can't we have just fabulous colors? And hopefully, Claire, I hope you're doing well. We'll get into what is righteous, who is righteous, a little. And yes, it's unfortunate that he does not speak English, but I do my best to, on his behalf, to explain some of his ideas. Okay, take it away.
Okay. Last week's class review, Birkat Haminim. We explored the history and meaning of Birkat Haminim, the blessing added to the Amidah against heresy and destructive ideological forces. Unlike the original blessings established by
Anshe Knesset, a lot of the men of the Great Assembly.
This blessing was added later by Rabban Gamliel and formulated by Shmuel HaKatan during the 2nd century CE. The Gemara's discussion shows that Hazal understood future spiritual crises would emerge, and the structure of prayer was designed to respond to those historical challenges.
Right, we discussed how the rabbi walked in and said, like, who here knows how to do this? The idea is like this was something that the example we gave was like on the Excel sheet, right? There's an open tab, so to speak, which is like they always knew that they could do this. The problem was to find the right person to do that, which we'll touch upon.
We discussed who the original Minim were, primarily the early Jewish Christian sect. At first, they still lived fully within Jewish society. They attended the temple, prayed in synagogues, wore tefillin, and participated in Jewish communal life. So this actually reminds me, I was watching a lecture by Rabbi Skobach, and what he was saying was that basically the early Christians would not recognize like a modern-day Baptist who's a Trinitarian and eats pork and all that because they were Jewish, right? And so there's a massive incongruity between early Jewish Christianity and modern Christianity.
One more time?
So Skobach was mentioning that early Jewish Christians would not recognize modern Jewish Christians who are like Baptist Trinitarians who eat pork.
For sure. Obviously, yes.
Yeah. A point of the class was that the separation was initially not only theological, but deeply national. The uniqueness of Israel as a covenantal nation began to dissolve. The ideology of there is neither Jew nor Greek weakened Jewish national identity. The real breaking point came when parts of the movement cooperated with Roman persecution against the Jewish people.
I want to just mention this because in case it wasn't understood, I see here in the summary it's much more condensed, but someone heard the stream and told me that the uniqueness, like the separation I was saying is less theological, more national. Just to be clear, as we're going to see in a second, it's obviously also theological, but I'm saying, but there's another very strong element, one which I think I was stressing more, but it's not that I'm ignoring the other element, and I would say Claire should be very happy with this blessing.
Out of curiosity, Hezi, do you remember in Discord the video you posted where there was a discussion between a female Reform rabbi and an Orthodox rabbi?
Sure.
So in that, he mentions Wittgenstein's point about private language, and what he connects this is the idea that it's one thing for you to have your own personal faith or personal practice, but when you're talking about communal institutions, you have to abide by the public rules or the public forms of life, as Wittgenstein would say. And this is kind of what Christianity broke off from Judaism, is that they sort of left the form of life.
Yeah, there's things like that could be said about the Reform movement as well.
Yeah, although I would say it's a little bit more explicit in the case of Christianity.
Look at that. Claire, you and I, in Hebrew, would say Baruch Shekivanti. It's a good thing that, great minds think alike. Okay, take it away.
We then explored the deeper theological issue behind the blessing. Birkat Haminim protects the principle of Yehud Hashem, the absolute unity of Hashem. The ninth blessing corresponds to?
Echad, what is this?
Hashem Echad.
Hashem Echad. Heresy was understood as damaging the concept of divine unity itself. Using the Maharal, we connect this idea to creation itself. The world was created through 10 utterances. The first utterance, Bereshit, is hidden. It represents the inner unity behind all existence.
Right, we said
Bekat,
9 above and 9 below. That gives us the 18, right?
yes. Bekat Haminim responds to ideologies that fractured at hidden unity. Yeah, I mean, this is very similar to just the idea of non-dualism and the idea that all is one, right? A central tenet of Jewish faith. We also traced the gradual development of Christianity from an internal Jewish movement to a separate theological system, including the belief that God had abandoned Israel after the destruction of the temple. So this is a little bit complicated because it's not necessarily that Christians believe God abandoned Israel; they believe they are Israel.
Again, last one.
Christians don't believe God abandoned Israel; they believe Christians are Israel.
Well, both.
No, I'm saying I know Christians who say God still has a covenant with Israel. It's just that the Christian church is Israel.
Right.
Yeah. We also as an important theme was that this blessing is rooted in not in personal hatred. Normally, Judaism teaches let sin cease, not sinners. But in moments of existential spiritual danger, the removal of destructive influence became necessary. We discussed
Just to also mention over here again that we obviously realize we're going through a summary, and even our class we did doesn't cover. It's still certain generalizations, and we understand that there's differences and different nuances within the Christian communities out there. So try not to take any offense. Go on.
We discussed the practical and social role of the blessing. It created a clear distinction within the synagogue life. A heretic could not comfortably recite or affirm the blessing. This eventually forced separation between communities. Rav Kook's definition of a min was especially important. A min is someone who actively and intentionally opposes Israel, not someone who is merely uninformed or struggling spiritually. We concluded with why Shmuel HaKatan was uniquely chosen to formulate this blessing. He was known for teaching, "When our enemy falls, do not rejoice."
Right. So I want to just mention over here again that Rav Kook doing that is allowing us to lessen the intensity of this blessing, right? Because then not everyone is categorized as a min. Now the Shmuel Katan reference over here is just like if we're going to now spiritual, because remember we were saying that the men of the Great Assembly filled the blessings with this prophetic power and this deep insight of who they were. Now, if Shmuel Katan is going to do this, if Shmuel the Little is going to do this, right? And we spoke about this, Ben, when we did Ethics of the Father, right? Hu haya omer, Shmuel Katan omer. Like when we mentioned these things, these sayings are what these sages were known for, right? They embody this thing. So we know that this man, when your enemy falls, do not rejoice. We knew he's not filled with hatred.
Yeah, and another point I would add here is this point about the difference between someone who intentionally is sins versus not. It kind of reminds me of Freud's point about the id, this ego, and the superego, where the superego represents Torah. The superego is the call of Hashem, and so if you as long as you aren't following your id without having that superego to keep you in line, that's one thing. But if you completely get rid of the superego in the sense that you completely reject the idea of a higher moral authority and the unity of God, then you're basically completely out of the fold. Does that make sense?
Generally, yeah.
Okay. When your enemy,
someone.
Oh, only someone completely free of personal hatred could compose a prayer dealing with the destruction of evil, had some inkling of prophetic insight. Finally, we connected the blessing to redemption and the return of Israel. Heresy claimed that God had abandoned his people. Jewish history and the return of Israel reveal the opposite, that the Shekhinah never truly departed. Wait, truly departed. Wait, does it say truly or never truly departed? Oh, never truly departed.
All right, fantastic. So that was a nice quick reminder of where we were and now where we're heading. We're heading to the righteous. And because Claire's also asking questions about, we'll discuss we'll do a little background of what is the tzaddik? Who is the tzaddik? Again, you could do a whole series on who someone righteous is, but we could speak about it a little. Do you want to open up the blessing?
I do. Yeah.
What is this going on over here? Even the most moronic can understand. Where the problem is that Jews have not dared to ram home that point. I don't know. I think like Jews do mention that often. We got in trouble for that for one of our silly soldiers doing that to a statue 2 weeks ago. Right? He was trying to ram that point home. Okay. Go ahead, Ben.
Okay. Amidah, the righteous, על הצדיקים ועל החסידים ועל זקני עמך בית ישראל ועל פליטת סופריהם ועל גרי הצדק ועלינו יאמרו רחמך אדוני אלוהינו ותן שכר טוב לכל הבוטחים בשמך באמת ושים חלקנו עמם לעולם ולא נבוש כי בך בטחנו. ברוך אתה אדוני משען ומבטח לצדיקים.
May I?
Sure.
May your mercy be aroused, Hashem our God, upon the righteous, upon the pious, upon the elders of your people Israel, upon the remnant of their scholars, upon the true proselytes, and upon us. Grant beautiful reward to all who trust in your name in truth, and place our lot among them, and may we never be put to shame, for we have put our trust in you. Blessed are you, Hashem, support and trust of the righteous.
Okay. It's also, again, it's important to remember every time we get into these blessings is that what we're going to speak about right now is, and again, these are from the teachings and of my rabbis and from what I've learned in the past, but the idea is that these are deep insights that are inside these blessings, right? They're condensed inside the blessing right now. So if I expand a little, bear with me. Okay, so who?
Already an apology for your tensions?
What?
This is a pre-apology for your tensions?
I'm just thinking, I'm thinking right now, like, because you think about it, there's like, 7 sentences, we end up speaking for an hour, right? But like, I feel like that's hafochba v'hafochba kikulaba, right? As Ben Badbad would say. So Claire asked us, rightfully so, who is this righteous dude, right? And really this is a very deep, maybe I say it about each one of the blessings is very, very deep, right? On the surface, it does really seem like we're talking about just praying on behalf of these, righteous individuals and these scholars and the Gerim, the converts. But really beneath the surface, there's something more that's going on over here. And first we would say, why are we even praying for the righteous people, right? Because usually who would we be praying for? Kirk, who do you think we usually are praying for?
I don't know. Who?
The
weak,
poor, the widow,
the sick, the people that are needy, some people that have sinned, right? They're asking for things, right? So why is the righteous person, why is he needing a blessing over here, right? And why are they requiring this protection? So that's really the first question we have to ask when even looking at this blessing. And this is because the tzaddik, right? He ultimately is facing in this world danger, and this is this tension that he's feeling. I think the Gemara actually brings in Avodah Zarah, in the tractate of Avodah Zarah, gives. You might have heard this that in the past. Motzi Chamam and Nartika. You know this. You ever heard this?
That sounds familiar.
So it's this. In the future, God removes the sun from his nartik, from his sheath, okay? And the wicked are going to get judged by it, and the righteous get healed by it. Now, if you look in the Gemara over there, it's not describing them as like physically ill, but they're like spiritually ill, right? There's like an existential wound that they're dealing with. And this is because the tzaddik, the righteous, he is really living according to truths that in this world don't actually fully reveal themselves, right? Because the righteous, the tzaddik, he is believing that morality should govern reality ultimately, and he wants truth is obvious to him when he's looking around. Think of the story of Shimon Bar Yochai, right, coming out of the cave, burning everyone, right? So he is, that's din, right? Justice needs to have its place in the world. But and we saw this about when we were talking about the Dayanim also. In our world, though, just like we're not meeting God in justice, right? So too, we see that the world is not really working according to how the tzaddik, the righteous person, would want. In our world, we have obviously power and abuse of power, and we have the political force, and we have our historical process. There's a lot of other stuff going on, obviously. And this creates like a big tension or a contradiction even between the tzaddik, right? That he's like inward, and then like outwardly how the world is actually being like displayed, right? So this is a tension that the tzaddik already has that he needs some protection from. Now, let me just also explain a little more on this Gemara idea of the sun coming out of the nartik, coming out of the sheath, right? So it's very central. Like, what does it mean that the sun is inside our nartik, that it's hidden, right? It's letting us know that truth, the sun, exists, right? But it's actually being concealed, right? So the world is actually hiding. Like, it's the divine providence, we don't see it clearly. And spiritual meaning of things, it's hard for us to find. And, the ultimate justice that we're going to want for the world also, we don't see these things so clearly. We could also see this even in the promise, I won't even go down there. But we don't see these things in the day-to-day. And the tzaddik, he is perceiving this fragmented truth, so to speak. And for him, he's dealing with this contradiction. Now, obviously, in the future, the Gemara is letting us know that this is going to be removed, right? The truth is going to become visible, and then morality and reality could actually unite, right? So this is this tension that the tzaddik is living in. Thoughts, questions?
So this tension is what we are praying for the tzaddik to be able to resolve, or?
Yeah, that's going to be, that's at least where I'm going to try to take us tonight, saying sort of that's the same thing, because we're again, the blessing is for this righteous person that in theory he should be saved.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm saying there's more to this in this blessing. So part of it is this tension that he's already feeling because he's looking at the world in one way, and it's not up to, in a certain sense, it's not up to his standards, like we were saying. Now, the Maharal, the great Maharal in Prague, he also gives us a deep teaching, I believe, with regards to why are these tzaddikim so vulnerable as well. That also he goes through, like, I believe, like a similar line of thought, which is that like they're above nature in a certain sense, right? Nature is like resisting. We talked about this also. The temple is like an 8th-day creation in a 7th-day world. So too is the tzaddik. He is like morally and spiritually, he's like living in this one place, but the world has sort of sending out antibodies at this person as well, right? Like holiness, or like this standard, right? Like it creates actually vulnerability. You could even say that in the war, right? The double standard that people are talking about in Israel all the time about like Gaza, like how are they saying that we're butchering when we're sending out the leaflets and we're doing things, and then the world's holding us to a higher standard. When you present yourself in a certain way, right, that holiness is creating now you being vulnerable to people now demanding more from you, right? And the world demanding more from you.
Yeah, I understand that. And it's interesting, obviously. I'm also curious because the way that you describe it, tzaddik here, the way that the definition we're playing with sounds very... Obviously, there's some contrast here, ala tzaddikim v'ala chasidim, so contrast righteous and pious. So we already know there's two things here. But also, the way you describe tzaddikim, righteous, sounds a lot like Nevi'im, or prophets, like a Navi. You're saying being able to perceive the truth, even though it's concealed, and being vulnerable.
That's a fair point. I hear what you're saying. So I would say that, not obviously, I should clarify that the truth there, by the way, I would say probably one of the prerequisites for a Navi is that he would be a tzaddik, right? So you could say that not all tzaddikim, not all righteous people are prophets, but all prophets are righteous people.
Right.
And you could also say that the righteous, right, have, whether it's Ruach HaKodesh, or they are moving towards that direction, and the true tzaddik is clearly looking at the world differently than we are.
Right, so it's kind of like what Ramchal is saying, the Ramchal, maybe others as well, where you get to a point where you merit to be a Navi, and at that point maybe you're a tzaddik, but then to be a Navi is something that is granted to you by God. That is external to you, is being able to do that.
Yeah, Kirk.
So do you think that there's different levels of tzaddikim in the sense of, do you think there's such a thing as like a difference between a secular tzaddik, like say Albert Einstein, and then like a religious tzaddik, like a famous Rebbe, or in a sense that both have influenced humanity for the positive, but just in different levels? Does that make sense?
Both are good people, I would say, and as we spoke about in the past, like a Gentile, right, could be as long as he's living his true righteous life, he is at the same holiness status as the high priest, right? So it's not only the Jews can achieve that spiritual level. However, the tzaddik is more than just someone that's like a nice person in the context of well, I guess you're saying not in the context of Judaism, but like tzaddik is someone that is one with God. Well, not one with God, but one that is living this righteous life through God. Well, we're actually going to give a breakdown as far as the tzaddik and also the chassid as well in a second. So do you mind if we come back to that?
Yes, but basically, just to TLDR it for now, no, like just the concept tzaddik does not apply to a secular figure, even though a secular figure can be a great person.
And a secular person could also be a righteous person as well.
But they can't. Can they be a tzaddik? Is my question.
Yeah, they could be a tzaddik as well.
Okay. Sorry, I was misinterpreting, but yes, let's continue.
Even though we call them chasidei umot haolam, we usually call them chasidim, the pious.
We have here. I'm curious. We have a definition here of gerei tzedek, or true proselyte. Right. So we can talk about that as well, because it's kind of connect.
Well, I'm going back for a second. I think it's important to remember again, these blessings are being said in exile, right? Like that, this is the context of where like these blessings are being said, right? So like again, even exile is like, well, we're in exile, and the blessings, right? This is also the blessings we're asking for, and as we're building up towards the redemption blessings as well, we're asking for. There's a specific vision that we want, right? So even redemption itself, that we're moving towards, we need to protect the righteous from redemption itself. Because redemption is changing the structure of holiness also, right? Which is like there's in exile, holiness is really dealing with like the individual, and it's spiritually personal. But like the tzaddik, the tzaddik ultimately has to realize that even though he's the center when we're in exile, right? He like needs to survive by separating himself from society. When we come back, when we're redeemed, right? Things are changing at that point, right? When the Jewish people come back, then again, and this, like, I'm not saying this from where I stand now politically, just from how things have to happen on the ground, right? Holiness ultimately needs to become national, and this goes back to the blessings we were talking about earlier about the in-gatherings, right? So, which means there's a collective, which means it's civilizational, it's also political as well, right? If we're thinking that this is just like a prayer that you're saying for yourself, you have to realize that when you're making this prayer, again, you're asking, it's in the context of building a nation and defining what Jewish life is and rebuilding the land of Israel. All that's part of it, because this is where we want these righteous people to be coming to. Which is one more point on Rav Kook. Again, he has a very, very deep teaching. You guys know I'm very, very connected to, but really, he says how redemption moves holiness from the individual to the collective ultimately. But if there's a righteous person who remains only in this exile spirituality mode, he's going to have a very hard time struggling during redemption. Hint, hint, our favorite friend, Jacob Mugatu, right? Even though Jacob is a righteous person, right? Because he continues to draw holiness, right? From withdrawal, from individuality, separation in a certain sense. That's the tzaddik. But in redemption, right, there's participation in history. There's the responsibility for the kalal, the people of Israel. There's an attachment to a nation, right? You could even see this teased out in the book of Job. I don't know if Jess is going to jump on because we said his name, but he is and this is a teaching of money too. He is a righteous man, right? This is who Iyov is, and this is how God is talking about him, showing him off to Satan, so to speak, right? Mm-hmm. But he's caught in between historical ages, right? And the Gemara lets us know that. How do we know that? Because when it talked about, he was fearing that his children are going to sin, right? He keeps on giving these sacrifices all the time, and this is not just like anxiety, right? He has a fear that his worldview, right, his form of tzaddikut, his form of righteousness, his the spiritual language that he's using is not going to survive to the next generation, right? And so a person could be righteous, right, but spiritually he's misaligned, like historically, what the generation needs. By the way, we see this also with Hanoch, right? Hanoch gets taken away because there's like a mismatch with him and the people, and again, this has to do with the righteous person as well. There's Ben, you might know this verse from the Torah, right? Ubata el kohanim v'le'levim ve'l'shofet asher yeh bayamim hahem. Right? You're gonna come. Asher yeh bayamim hahem. Yes. So you're gonna come to the judge or the Levite or the priest that you have in those days. And Rashi over there explains that when it talks about like the judges, you only have the judges of your time, and it's not only the judges that are alive in your generation, right? Like as in by necessity, but it's also, he says, the idea that the judges are who understands the generation, right? Like the people that are touching grass, that are relevant, they're with the vibe, so to speak. Mm-hmm. Okay. Like it doesn't matter that someone's alive, but if he's still in exile mentality, how is he actually going to help me, move forward, through this? Yeah. Now, and by the way, the Zohar also talks about these ideas, how we have to pray for the tzaddikim, because when Mashiach comes, they're also going to have a hard time. But let's talk about the tzaddik and chassid. So for all intents and purposes, because maybe I should have done this to begin with, we should like frame it like who the differences between them are. The tzaddik is someone that is doing what he's obligated to do, and he is seeking holiness. And maybe that would be more the chassid. The tzaddik is fulfilling what's required of him. He is avoiding doing evil, and he's following the law. That's what required from the tzaddik. Again, you could use tzaddik in stories that you've heard as a child of the tzaddik, or the tzaddik, like, there's different stories, but there's a tzaddik, someone doing these things. Then there's a chassid, right? A chassid would be someone that's going beyond what he's obligated to do, and he is seeking actually something that's higher than like the regular holiness and extra levels of devotion, right? Like, let's say, so the Assyrians, so to speak, there's ideas that like people called the Hasid in the Talmud period were also known as Assyrian, right? They're taking on extra restrictions, taking on a vow of the Nazarite vow would be an act, a Hasid act, so to speak. Okay, so however, the blessing over here, because we just explained a little about the righteous person, the blessing for the chassid, someone who could go a little overboard, right? We spoke about this in the past, Ben, about the foolish chassid shoteh, right? Someone that is, the Talmud gives a story. There's two different stories actually in the Talmud, but there's a baby drowning, and a guy has his phylacteries on, and, he doesn't want to jump in because like they might get wet. Or, there's a woman in the water, I could go jump in and save her, but if I save her, I'm going to touch her, and that's a problem, right? So this idea of extreme religiosity that's detached from reality obviously can become very, very destructive, right? We obviously understand that. So I'm getting distracted for a second by these comments over here. I'm just going to look at this for 1 second. Jason, I'm happy you're here. Solomon died in idolater. Now, obviously, Solomon wasn't David, but he was extremely smart, and he was the king of peace, king of Jerusalem. Saying that he died in idolater is very difficult. I think is misleading. He died allowing for people to participate in shirk, in shituf, which was way ahead of its time and clearly way too complicated. And we weren't there yet as a society, but slowly and surely we could see a little more colors. No, we're not reading from the Quran. Maybe he was talking to her. Okay, they're talking between themselves. Okay, so actually I don't need to care about this because it seems they're talking. Okay, sorry. Yeah.
Okay,
questions?
so we define tzaddikim, we define chasidim.
We
right?
define tzaddik, we define chassid. Oh, you're reminding me.
Yeah, I'm just
Okay, we define chasidim, we define tzaddikim. Okay, so let's actually move on. So,
yeah, we have a lot of definitions here. We have where we're going through, right? There's a lot of people that are mentioned.
Yeah, there's Zeknei Amcha Beit Yisrael. So who Zekei Amcha Beit Yisrael Ve'al Plitetza for him. By the way, there's Ziknei. There's a different version which says She'erit, which is like the remnant, so to speak. But even Ziknei, it's like sort of who the elders of who's left from here, so to speak. And we have to remember also that the way I was taught is that this is talking about, aside from a surface level, speaking about like the elders of Israel, right? The elders that we have. But when it's talking about She'erit, it's talking about the 10 tribes, right? We were a much larger group at a certain period. And again, when I talk about the 10 tribes, that makes sense in the context that this blessing is being said in the context of hoping for redemption, right? Because that's part of the blessing we're making over here, right? So because we lost these tribes, right? Now we were lost, and our whole Jewish identity turned into Jewish, right? From Judah, that's what it came into. But as you guys know, I believe that the state of Israel is the awakening of Ephraim coming back. And we spoke about how the religious Jews and the secular Jews parallel in certain ways, Judah and Ephraim. And this is also true historically speaking as well. If you look all the way back to even Jeroboam, much more open to make peace with the world outside, calling idol worshippers his brother, dealing with also economics. They were much more liberal, so to speak, than Judah inside the land of the Judean hills, which we're today. I'd also just mention that Isaiah also talks about this, obviously, that Ephraim lo yikaneh Yehuda, Ephraim won't be envious of Judah, and Judah won't oppress Ephraim. That everyone's gonna meet their place, right? Which is like the Ephraim will recognize the certain spirituality and tradition that Judah is bringing back with him. However, Judah also won't oppress Ephraim and realize that there's more than one color inside this 12 tribe flag going on. Yeah, what were you going to say, Kirk?
I was just going to say, just to clarify, when you say liberal, do you mean liberal in the Milton Friedman sense of like classical liberal, or do you mean like liberal?
Classic.
Okay.
Yeah, classic. Not what we're dealing with today. But like you mentioned, Ben, there's also the Gerim. There's a whole group over here, right? There's the Gerei Tzedek, and there's also, the Gerim, and there's Aleinu as well. How's it? I wonder, I can't remember right now if the other version is just Ger or is it also Ger Tzedek. But just the concept of Ger, by the way, there's a Ger Toshav and there's a Ger Tzedek as well, right? These are different ideas, but the convert.
Ger Tzedek, can you explain that? I don't think I know a clear definition.
A Ger Tzedek is a Ger that ultimately fully becomes a convert, full convert. A Ger Toshav is a foreigner living amongst you, right? Someone that is accepting the 7 Noahide laws, someone that is living in the land of Israel and is accepting sort of the reality, the political reality of the land of Israel as well.
I see. Okay, so
and he many times is the ger that gets all those rights that we talk about in the Torah, right? Which if you only have, you have to make sure he's taken care of and he's being fed and watch out for him. This is his ger that wants to be part of your society. However, he's not buying into,
Right,
he's not
right.
converted.
Yeah, they go to shop. Got it. Okay, so I mean, this maybe is related to my question in a sense, because I often get confused, and here is also a confusion in terms of I don't always understand why this is mentioned. The why the ger tzedek, why a convert is mentioned,
Oh,
if especially if it says aleinu, if it says
oh.
for us. So it's like, why do we need at this point to mention the ger specifically?
First of all, I love those questions. It makes me happy. It just makes me happy that like the intuitive, the challenging what already doesn't make sense, while clearly looking forward to understanding it even more. So it's a lot of fun. Job, I don't know if you should go back a little and hear what we were talking about. Job, talking about how he's a man who is, his anxiety is because he is a righteous man caught between two different ages. And you could see that with his sons and the kids sacrificing. Anyways, go back and
Wow, you really did summon him. That is impressive.
Right, we got him.
Okay.
By the way, if I had to guess, I mentioned that, and then I would say Jason maybe sent him a message saying, "I get it. I got it. He just wrote it down over here. Jason told me exactly." But that's still considered summoned. It's the TLC doing its thing. But think about that, Jess, right? The fact that he is sacrificing because he's nervous for his children, right? Because he's nervous that he can't teach them. They don't actually know either the righteous operating system, iOS, that I'm living. Either it's not relevant for my kids and I can't handle that's the tension I'm feeling, or I don't know how to pass that forward to them ultimately. But okay, so the Gerim, you asked a fantastic question. Why are we focusing about these converts, and then we at the same time also talking about us in this blessing, right? So I would say what you are alluding to, well, not alluding to, but what we should be alluding to, and what I think this blessing is alluding to, that the Gerim, the convert, are actually occupying a very unique spiritual role, right? Unlike a born Jew, the convert is joining Israel, right? The famous lines of Ruth and Nomi, Amechu ami ve'elochai Elohai, right? Your people are my people and your God are my God. You should realize also the fact that she did it first, my people, shows that there's like this nationality about it first, and then there's a religious element to it. But either way, he is doing this voluntarily, right? Consciously, right? He's aware of what he's doing. And this is through the love of Hashem, master of the universe. Now, the Rambam talks about how the Torah commands, he does a diuk over here. He stresses a specific linguistic point of view. There is loving your fellow, ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, love your fellow as yourself. And there's also loving the convert, which is ve'ahavta et hager. Now, why is it parallel to the love of Hashem? Loving the ger is like loving Hashem, because when we say the ve'ahavta et Hashem Elohecha, right? Both of them have et. Yeah. When it's talking about your friend, that it doesn't have the et, because the convert, right, is attaching himself directly to Hashem, to the covenant. It's transcending truth in that sense, as in it's not built in this. It is going straight to the main event, and because it's going straight to the main event, there's a sense of it which there's like, we need to love him like we would love Hashem, because he automatically is loving Hashem, right? He's already closer in that sense. Now, the reason we says ala ger ve'aleinu, ger tzedek ve'aleinu. So there's one level like we just spoke about. The convert is very close to God.
Can you tell me where does the Rambam talk about this?
What about the ger where he does his diuk?
Yeah, is this
he does this in? I think he talks about it in the Mishnah Berurah. Let's confirm for a second.
I have a book where it collects his writings on the Torah, so maybe I can look at that when it says that verse. Maybe it's there.
Yeah, Sefer HaMitzvot.
Sefer Mitzvot. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Okay.
Reish Vav.
Reish
If
Vav.
you want to look for it. I'm sorry that I don't remember that by heart. You scared me for a second also when you asked that. I was like, wait, is it the Rambam? But it is the Rambam. Okay, but Hager ve'aleinu, you said this connection, which is the convert and us. That's also a very, very deep idea there as well. There's the ger ve'toshav, the stranger and the foreigner and the resident, right? And a human really is both, right? I'm a stranger and I'm a resident. I'm a resident through my body, right? I'm here. I'm a stranger through my neshama, through my soul, because my soul never really belongs to this world. What does Abraham say when he comes to his when he sees the people of Canaan? He says, "Ger v'toshav anochi imachem." Right? I'm a stranger and I'm a resident among you. And this is not like sociology, right? This is more of like a metaphysics, right? A human existence itself is, as we know, paradoxical, right? I'm embodied, I'm also transcendent. And that's like a very deep idea that we're talking about over here, right? Like we have a mission as Jewish people to embody this paradox historically, right? We were born outside of our land in exile, and we're detached really from like this instinctive belonging, so to speak, right? Like we only become we're becoming a people in the desert. We're being taken out of Egypt, right? And that's why when like Israel carries within itself this, we have again this existential estrangement. Estrangement, is that a word? I think it's a word.
I think so.
What?
I think so. Estrangement.
All right. Right. So we are we're moving around this place in that sense, and our mission is to teach humanity, right, that a man, right, is not, or humankind, not man, he's not fully at home in like really this material existence. Ultimately, we want something more. We also want to transcend, like we're saying in that sense. While we're still residents for the time being, right, we're also foreigners over here. So,
yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and so this would put Judaism in conflict with someone like, for example, Ernest Becker, who says that religion is just to avoid the inevitability of death, because we don't believe that death, in the sense of the complete annihilation of your soul, is inevitable.
That is correct. However, there are people that even within the Jewish religion that think of, reward and punishment in that ways, and that's why they do things, because they feel safe that way. However, our sages have often told us, and it's built into the name, where he who wrestle with God, we're supposed to challenge his ideas and to understand deeper, have a deeper and more substantial relationship with him. But
I was just going to say, just to wrap this point up, people often say that Judaism does not believe in an afterlife, and whilst too many Jews don't believe in an afterlife, that's not true for Judaism.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. So that Ben, was that satisfying?
Yeah, no, it was good. I don't know if we will be able to wrap this prayer up. Maybe we will do.
We don't have 10 more minutes. Oh, actually, we started late. Sorry.
I do have 10 more minutes. I mean, if you want to wrap it up in 10 minutes.
We'll see. Well, we'll stop when we stop. So obviously we want God to be merciful and want Hashem to, how does it say it over here? Reward us. And bountiful reward to all who trust in your name in truth. Right? So also seemingly paradoxical over here. How can trust be false? Right? What does that mean to trust in your name? Like truthfully trust in your name. Seems kind of strange, I think. Yes?
I think in Psalms there's King David talks about this, right? He says Be'emet. He said something with Be'emet. I remember the verse. That's all I remember from the verse.
Right. a person could experience, right, a religious feeling, an emotion. I could be very spiritually moved without actual truth. But true trust, right, true trust would really emerge if it was revelation, if there was prophecy. If I had an authentic connection to the truth, I could fully trust with what I'm seeing, right? It's like almost less than faith. It's saying be'emet, not be'emunah. Like I want to fully have it validated. It's not questioning my trust in you now. It's just a higher level of certainty. And
Interesting. It reminds me, I was just listening to somebody talking about Yediat Hashem, which is like the first mitzvah the Rambam talks about. And he talks about how it's specifically knowing God and knowing about the unity of God, not believing in it, but knowing it. So you need to be able to be able to have an understanding of it. So it kind of connects to this.
That's good. I like that. And like you said, I mean, Rambam obviously puts that in, puts that, that's the undergirding of, much of his Torah, right? Which is, of course, you have to first, there's only really having a discussion once you fully understand God, and there's, you have your whole life to figure that out. Right? Make us really be those people that really trust you. And so here too, why are we being embarrassed, so to say? What is this shame that the righteous are feeling, right? And again, we talked about this contradiction between morality and reality, right? Where like he has to deal with why are the wicked prospering, right? The famous idea of tzaddik v'ralo, right? Why does reality appear different than the moral standards we have, right? Going back to the question that Job was ultimately dealing with. Why is this tension? Why is this not making sense? And I would say the blessing is moving towards concluding with like an eventual hope, though, right? Which is, I hope that truth will be visible and that the sheath we were talking about with the sun is going to be removed, right? And reality will ultimately unite. And again, this blessing is not talking about, we spoke about, just not praying for good people. There's the central message over here is that wickedness is not the only spiritual danger, right? If righteousness is disconnected from Hashem, from the divine, also from the divine moment in history, right? That's also a problem. And true tzadikut, true righteousness in the era of redemption, as I claim we're in, that I believe we're in, is attachment to Eretz Yisrael, to Am Yisrael, the national birth, understanding the historic transformation. And when we say, end with Baruch Atah Hashem Mish'an Muftach L'Tzadikim, right? That we are the support and trust of the righteous, right? Which is God is supporting us also during concealment. Certainly he's supporting us during revelation, please God. And the one who is guiding these righteous people through history towards redemption will ultimately guide us as well. Yeah. I had more to say, but I didn't like the last week. You also left without
2 weeks ago, not last week.
What?
2 weeks ago, not last week.
Or 2 weeks ago, sorry.
No, that's good. I mean, it also reminds me, a point about like Lona Bosch, we should not be put to shame, and like the struggle of tzaddikim. I think it talks about in Brachot about it brings stories about King David, and it talks about how King David was a king among other kings, and as a king, what do you expect a king to do? Most kings will. They wake up at like whenever they wake up. They can wake up whenever they want, and they drink whatever they want to drink, and they eat whatever they want to eat. But King David, he would wake up very early, and then instead of going to parties like the other kings, he would speak about alachot and try to like judge people and give them understanding of all that. And so for him, his embarrassment from that, his embarrassment that he wanted God to keep him safe from was the embarrassment of his peers, like him being embarrassed among his peers, because you have this social pressure of things that you should be doing. And I can see that personally also, especially as someone that does things that is like is has like secular friends and more religious friends. Like you have to make trade-offs. You have to be maybe less cool because you can't attend a certain thing on Shabbat or something like that.
The balance you want to find is you want to be cooler than the frum kids and frummer than the cool kids.
Right. So it's like that is a struggle, and obviously not can claim to be in this category of a tzaddik, obviously, but that's all of us. There's a sense of us where we want to get there, so that is the struggle that we should be identifying with as well.
Yeah.
Part of the struggle is also is relevance realization, right? Also recognize and discernment, recognizing where you are also,
right,
and realizing when to shift with the times, when you need to what is it? The tree that won't bend breaks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this kind of reminds me. I was watching a video by that Zarathustra serpent guy, who's, as I said, a secular Israeli guy, and he says he was mentioning his views on politics, and he was referencing a book by the economist Thomas Sowell called The Unconstrained Vision or something like that. But it basically says that people on the left have an unconstrained vision of human nature, and people on the right have a constrained vision of human nature. And the Zarathustra serpent guy was saying that we should balance it in the sense that we should progress our second natures, which are evolvable, but also recognizing that there is an intrinsic human nature which we evolved, and not try to overcome it.
Well, God clearly says it's crouching at your door. You should overcome it.
Well, no, in a sense that so we have a human nature, we can't get rid of the human nature, but we should try to tame our second nature.
Tame your second nature, and use it to elevate, yourself, right? It's taking all earthly things, right? That is ultimately the battle between the behemoth and the Leviathan, and why the righteous sit and eat in the booth, the sukkah of the Leviathan skin, right? Chaos, nature can be tamed, and then the holy becomes the holy of holies. Ben?
Very cool.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Discussion. Good week.